This is one of the big rivalries. I don't know if they get much bigger than this, really.
Yeah, like you said, the Classico, the GA, and I was even looking back to when they had their first match, and that was in 1892. And the interesting thing about that was back in an era when it was clubs that went through and represented the county. So back then, for Dublin, it would have been Young Ireland's, and Lawn Rangers for Kerry, who of course won the Club All Ireland there in the 90s. At that time, annual Congress, actually, I just found this in one of those history books. Annual Congress, the county champions were actually, it was decided there that they were permitted to select players from other clubs within the county. There was no Ulster team entered that year, so Kerry went directly to the All-Ireland final. Dublin beat Roscommon, and they went on to win the final with Young Ireland's representing them. So it's mad to think that it goes all the way back that far to 1892, and here we are in 2020 now, and they've played a total of 31 championship meetings. But Dublin have, like, if you take into consideration that during the 2010s, if we can call it that Dublin won 5 and drew 1 and didn't lose to Kerry at all, it had actually been more or less Kerry dominated for so long, because Kerry had won 17 championship games before that, whereas Dublin had only won 6. So for a long time it was probably fairly one-sided. And I know we always talk about the 70s and those huge clashes, but it really was Kerry for a long time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was something you were saying there. Imagine the war there would have been if Lawn Rangers are representing Kerry and they're allowed to pick players from other clubs, and it's like, no, we don't want anyone else. We don't want anyone else. We'll play our fellas. And imagine like the inter kind of parish rivalry there would have been over something like that. Clubs could have fallen out for years because he didn't start him, or they didn't start this fella, or they didn't call in this fella. I just think that would have been gas. But yeah, it's funny you say it. Like, now, obviously, Dublin are dominant. They were dominant throughout the last decade. But before that, really, like, apart from a couple here and there, it was all Kerry. And it's funny just how the wheel can turn. Like the likes of, I know you chatted to him recently enough, the likes of the Bomber and even Mick O'Dwyer, who lived through that rivalry, they must find it very, very hard to comprehend. You know, as the Galway boys always say, they must find it hard to comprehend being on the hind tit in that rivalry now, because it's not something that they were used to at all. Like Dublin beating Kerry at times was almost like an aberration there for a while. Now it's just kind of commonplace, and they must have been sick. Kerry people really must have been sick, considering Offaly stopped their 5 in a row in '82. They must have been sick then that Dublin, their greatest rivals, would go on and win 5 in a row last year, especially given that Kerry had the chance to undo them, particularly the first day. They had to have been sick over that.
I wonder how many rivalries in GA there are of this variety, because, you know, you can have a situation where Cork and Meath, who aren't neighbours, and they end up in a bitter rivalry for a few years. Mayo and Dublin, that's been going on now for a number of years, and I think probably periodically over history they will meet and there'll be huge clashes. But to have two counties that are geographically as far apart as you can probably get, that they've got this running rivalry for over 100+ years, like, where else do you see that in the GA? Like, even if you look at the hurling side of things, it's generally neighbours. Kilkenny, Tip Cork, Limerick, Clare, this sort of stuff. Do you have many rivalries like that where they're so geographically far apart? And obviously we're live there at the moment, so if anyone has any thoughts, please get your comments in.
Yeah, I don't think there'd be too many rivalries that are this far apart. Like, they're very far apart. One is down in the southwestern tip, and the other is on the east coast. Like, they're very, very far apart. So no, I don't think there's too many instances where, particularly over, like, Mayo Dublin is a rivalry relatively recent. It's a new enough rivalry. This is something that's been going on, as you say, it's been going on back since 1892, and I just thought it was even funny. You know, people often talk about they long for the good old days and things like that, and when football was a lot simpler. But just going back through the games, like 1892, Dublin won 4, Kerry 3 points. 1904, Kerry 5, Dublin 2. 1924, Kerry 4, Dublin 3. Like, it's just a completely different game now. It's poles apart from those days.
Oh, sure, the ball was an absolute irrelevance at that stage. There was a fight going on and a ball in the middle of it. I was actually, speaking of which, Actually, I was looking at the 1975 All-Ireland. So this is the one where Mickey Ned O'Sullivan got absolutely poleaxed during the middle of it and couldn't finish the game, and he was captain. So I'm just going to put it up on screen here, an article that was in the paper the next day. So I'm just going to read through it. So Michael O'Sullivan, as he's referred to here, captained the Kerry team, which won yesterday's All-Ireland Senior Football Final, but he did not know which team had won until 45 minutes after the game had finished. For Michael, a 23-year-old physical education teacher from Kenmare, was knocked out in the 20th minute of the match as he tried to waltz his way through the Dublin defence. He was carried off in a stretcher and rushed, still unconscious, by ambulance to Dublin's St Lawrence Hospital. Following an x-ray, he was transferred to Ward 3, where he did not regain full consciousness until about 5:25, 45 minutes after the game had finished. But the Kerry glory turned sour in Dublin last night when at least 100 people were taken to hospital during after-match celebrations. Ambulances were an almost constant call up to the closing time, ferrying injured people to hospital. Said a harassed fire brigade officer, "We have never been so busy. At least 100 people have already been taken to hospital with injuries. 2 men were stabbed in a pub row at Balgriffin and were rushed to St Lawrence's Hospital, where information on their condition was not immediately available." It's crazy sort of stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, that's mad stuff. I just went back and looked at the clip actually, and Micheál O'Hare, another one of his kind of great lines. Mickey Ned was playing centre back for Kerry that day, picked up the ball, and he was firing through their defence. And the old kind of, you don't let anyone go through the heart of your defence, something like that. But Micheál O'Hare's commentary was, Paddy Riley is after him, Georgie Wilson is after him, everybody's after him, and then he ends up getting absolutely thundered to the ground. And then Micheál says he's well and truly looked after now. One of those kind of great GA lines. But funnily enough, I think it was 30 years later. The Dublin captain, Sean Doherty, went down to the INEC in Killarney and presented Mickey Ned with the trophy. So he finally got to actually lift Sam Maguire. It was in 2005, celebrating the 30-year anniversary. So he definitely wasn't in the sort of condition to lift it that Sunday evening, but at least he did get to lift it eventually after.
I might just finish out that article because it's interesting the whole way through. Gardaí and Kulak, who were last night questioning 2 men in connection with the stabbing, said it appeared the incident occurred because of a row over the football final. Last night, the entire victorious Kerry team went to see Michael in hospital. Afterwards, he said, "I lost my sight and memory completely for a while. I remember nothing until after being tackled until I woke up in this hospital bed. But when my memory returned, the first thing I asked the nurse was, 'Who won?' When I heard the news, it was really fabulous, and I shouted, 'That's great.' Asked about the incident in which he was fouled, he said, 'I don't remember very much about it, but I don't think anyone set out to deliberately injure me.' Meanwhile, in Kenmare last night, a new shelf was being cleared in Neddy Ned's, where the Sam Maguire will adorn the little pub on the square where the Kerry captain lives with his widowed mother. I don't know where it will sit with all Michael's other trophies, but it must have pride of place." That was his mother, and she was Mrs. O'Sullivan, who was pulling pints and accepting congratulations with equal graciousness, said she was terrified when she saw the stretchers brought on. So it really is kind of... Can you imagine that happening these days? Interviews happening with parents and a lad in a hospital bed?
No, it's probably not something you could envisage happening now, realistically. Just kind of things have gone on, so we don't even see halftime interviews anymore. We rarely even see any sort of substantial interviews after or going into the dressing room. But that was kind of the character of the GA then. You were able to see those things. That was the kind of access that people had, and it's great because it's great kind of colour. Maybe it's too sanitized now. A lot of the best stories that we probably go through maybe are from kind of olden times. But it wasn't great for Mickey Ned, obviously. Immediately when I look at it, I think of, remember when the German goalkeeper Schumacher comes out and absolutely cleaves, I forget who they were playing, but he absolutely cleaves him. And that's kind of what this kind of reminded me of. And he's going, and you're just thinking, this isn't going to end well, and it didn't end well.
Yeah, sure, it's happened to plenty of players over the years. You get yourself lined up and get cleaned out of it. 1955 All-Ireland. So I was watching highlights of this. This was real old school film reel. Micheál O'Hare doing the commentary over it. And one of the things that stood out to me was Jim Brosnan, that he has 2 All-Ireland medals with Kerry, but during the commentary it was talking about how he was flown back from New York and he was advancing his medical studies over there at the time, comes back and scores 2 points in a 12 points to 1-6 victory, so obviously that's fairly crucial. And Tiggy Line was playing, he's an uncle of Pat Spillane, scored 6 points. and Hefo played at number 14. And throughout this was a 6-minute highlight reel, but he was getting on the ball very, very regularly. Hefo, he looked like a really stylish player. Now, he never won a final against Kerry as a player, but he of course went on and did so as manager, and ends up being, obviously a crucial factor in that rivalry for years to come after.
Oh yeah, sure. He was a massive part of that rivalry. Yeah, we're only even going to go into it later on. Like even Pat Gilroy, he's a godson of Hefo. Hefo kind of transcends Dublin football the whole way throughout his career. He was a brilliant footballer, obviously, but he was the one that went and kind of took. I remember doing a piece with Bomber before. He said Hefo took the physical stakes to a new level in the 1970s, and then on the back of that, Miko took it to another level. So Hefo was one of those, like when you think about this great rivalry, you kind of think Hefo on one side, and then you think Miko on the other side. Two characters that, yeah, like they're almost symbolic of football within the two counties. And I know we're probably going to get into, maybe 1978 here as well, which they would have both been involved in as well. The famous, like it's infamous now at this stage from Paddy Cullen's point of view, but the famous lob when Mikey Sheehy lobbed him, and there was a great line from Conahulatan at the time as well. It's just I love this sort of a thing. He says he's describing Paddy running back, and you can just see him scurrying back when he realizes, and we've all had that kind of epiphany moment in our head. We realize, oh no, this is not going to end well, and you're scurrying back, and Conrad, and suddenly Paddy dashed back towards his goal like a woman who smells a cake burning. The ball won the race and it curled inside the near post as Paddy crashed into the outside of the net and lay against it like a fireman who had returned to find his station ablaze. Just a brilliant line. And Kerry obviously went on to win 5-11 to 9 points. That was obviously one of the big turning points of that game, because those games had invariably been quite tight. But that kind of set off a chain of events where Kerry kind of steamrolled him that day.
Yeah, I wouldn't thought if you're looking for a modern equivalent, that'd be like realising you left the immersion on, wouldn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Realising, particularly when you were living at home or something, realising you left the immersion on and that your mother, or more likely your father, was going to absolutely tear through you. Yeah, not a good experience to have.
Like, obviously there's those 70s games, and we'll kind of dip in and out of them, but the rivalry in the last couple of decades, now it's kind of shifted over and back, of course. I mean, neither team was overly dominant in the 90s. Dublin got their All-Ireland, Kerry got their All-Ireland. That was the only final appearance that Kerry had in 97 during that All-Ireland. Then in the 2000s, Kerry won the All-Ireland 5 times. Then you go into the tensies, if we can call them that, and Dublin are absolutely on top, and Kerry just get a single All-Ireland. So it's kind of very much kind of flip-flopped between the two in the last couple of decades. It's not like it's been really, really close games, where they've been going tit for tat. You win one game, we win one game, that sort of thing. It's very much kind of really very much gone Dublin's way. But it's not like the games have been beatdowns either. Quite conceivably, you could have a couple of wins here for Kerry.
Oh, you definitely could as well. It's funny, like even if you look back at like Dublin did 5 in a row, obviously last year, but you look back on it, that's why it was so important from a Kerry point of view that they would break that cycle. Dublin have gone on a run now, and invariably in this rivalry, teams or counties seem to go on a bit of a run, and you need to kind of break that cycle before you can kind of get any momentum and get moving yourself. And if you do break it, chances are, like everybody kind of thinks that Kerry are going to be the team to eventually stop the Dubs. And if they do eventually stop them, people think that maybe they could get 2 or 3 or 4 wins, and then the whole tide could turn again. But turning that tide, I suppose, has been the most difficult part. Like in 2001, Dublin thought it looked like they had the tide turned. Kerry had been up by 8 points in that famous All-Ireland, was it quarterfinal down in Thurles, and it was just the whole scene of it. Dublin people being caught in traffic, as my mother always says. Dublin people don't realise that anything exists outside of Dublin. They think they can land to anywhere in the country, any ground in the country, and there'll be absolutely no issue. But so a load of them watched it in pubs halfway down the journey, or they turned back just because it was at a standstill and they were never going to get there. But that famous kind of Morris Fitzgerald sideline and Tommy Carr kind of chawing in his ear before he hit the sideline, everything about it. Like Kerry had been 8 up, ended up 1 down, needed Morris with the last kick of the game to basically draw them level and get a replay. and he put it over, that unbelievable point. And then the picture after, Paddy has his arm around Morris. And Morris now was on and off the team at that stage, and people would have talked about, why isn't Paddy playing him differently? You saw him with his arm around him then after, and you can just see a dejected Paul Curran then in the picture beside them as well. But even that, there's just so many layers to the rivalry when you go back through the years. So many different kind of key kind of things have happened over the years.
You'd have a fair job trying to pick a most iconic score from this rivalry, because you've already mentioned that Mikey Sheehy lob over Paddy Cullen. That score from Morris Fitz is just played time and time again, and I think it featured in the 20 great GA moments that RTE might have done there a number of years ago. Stephen Cluxton's winning score, I think Kevin McManaman's goal in the same game in 2011, and of course his kind of punctuation point goal in 2013 that kind of let Kerry know you're not going to beat us this year. There's a lot of scores like that. Actually, what would be the most iconic one for you? And I know I'm putting you on the spot there.
I wasn't around for the Mikey Sheehy thing, but I grew up to that and hearing about it. And our manager always said that was betting to us: never ever turn your back on the ball. It was the one thing, you're never ever turn your back on the ball. And then it was the fear of, even if you were running back in a hurling match, now you think, oh, Mikey Sheehy turned his back to the ball and look what happened to him, I'm going to turn around. That definitely would be one. But I to be honest, I think for the significance of it, and I know it was a place ball, but the significance of Cluxton's free and just the nonchalance, almost the way he stepped up, he took barely any time. You know the way you can usually you brace yourself for the drama that's about to follow, and you're like someone standing over a free and you have 15 or 20 seconds. He put down the ball, went back, stroked it over the bar, and that kind of turned the tide of history in a way as well. Look at what has happened since then. Champions in 11, 13, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 as a result of that one thing. The significance of that just helped, I suppose, the dam to burst. So he had to place big significance. And obviously he'd have to place big significance on McManaman's goal before that, because they would never have been in the position if he hadn't got that goal.
Which of the games in the modern rivalry would actually stand out as the best for you? That 2013 game was absolutely incredible, and Gooch had an unreal first half, we'll say, and that James O'Donoghue goal, the way he sort of, the step back pass, that's just something you don't really see in Gaelic football, and I can't think of anyone doing that before or since. And I'd be interested if anyone has seen something comparable to let us know, because it was just a really brilliant moment. Because GA, they're such furious games, for someone in the middle of all of that to actually have to feel like they had the time and space to take a step back, lovely little kick pass in. And obviously we won't forget Donegal, I think it was Donegal Walsh with the reverse hand pass too, that allowed that for that goal. That was an unbelievable game. The two 2019 games were unreal. Not so much 2015, that was the final that was absolutely destroyed by rain. 2016 then, I think that was the semi-final when Kerry had themselves in a great little spot, because there was a few years there where I'd say Kerry feel like they really should have gotten a little bit more out of it. 2011, 4 points up with 6 minutes to go, as we talked about. 2016 game that I'm talking about now, Kerry 5 up at half time. They obviously had the code of Cluxton cracked for a little while, and I think they started to go, I think they very much figured out the kick out situation after that. And then the 2019 draw, a point ahead with an extra man in position in extra time of the drawn game, injury time of the drawn game. It's been an awful lot of heartache for them amidst brilliant games.
Oh, it definitely has, yeah. The one that probably sticks out for me is they were obviously ahead early in the 2013 game, a brilliant game. But the 16 semi-final, I just, like Kerry, as you said, Kerry looked like they had Dublin cracked. They had Cluxton's kind of kickouts cracked, and they really went for the throat just before half time. But still and all, Dublin were able to just, there was coolness personified coming down the clutch, as the golfers would say. And Connolly kicks a pint off his left foot underneath the Hogan stand that is just absolutely majestic. He's obviously right-footed. He kicks that pint off his left like he's been doing it for the last 20 years. It was just absolutely outrageous, an unbelievable score. That game just really stands out for me, because you're thinking, the way a team can be shell-shocked during a game, and you just don't have time to recover. You're just not on it, and you just can't kind of maybe get yourself together. That was kind of the case, I thought, in 2016. I thought, oh, geez, Kerry have them cracked here. They're after putting the foot on the throat now, and they just need to kind of turn it, and they're home. And Dublin were still able to kind of find a bit more. I suppose the key to it sometimes with these teams, and I know Pat Spillane said it to us on a live show recently. He said the thing about '82 was we had no time to react. Whereas, this year, even in the All-Ireland final and even in 16 in the semi-final, Dublin had time to react. I suppose they had time to maybe pull things together. I suppose the only way to beat Dublin realistically is like how Kerry were beaten in '82, is something at the end of the game where there's literally no more time to respond to it. That seems to be the only way to beat them.
Yeah, because it doesn't seem to matter what the situation is or how dire the circumstances are. This team always finds a way. And I wonder when GA gets going again at some time in the future, will they continue to be the same? Very much up in the air. Now, we decided to look at a sort of a player rivalry, and there's a list as long as your arm in terms of who are brilliant players that kind of define this. And you even talked about Miko, Kevin Heffernan, who actually got Footballer of the Year one year when he was manager, which is insane, and more insane than Brian Cody getting man of the match in the 2008 All-Ireland hurling final. So, but there you go. Anyway, what players before we look at the rivalry, what players stick out to you? I mean, Clifford is going to be a huge name. Obviously, Con O'Callaghan is, Gooch, Bernard Brogan. I mean, Morris Fitz. The list goes on and on.
The list does go on and on. I suppose there's the Clifford Con rivalry, or not rivalry, the duel between the two of them. That's something that we're probably going to be talking about for the next decade. Obviously, both in their early 20s, both are just absolutely sensational and could easily go down as the greatest forwards in their county's history if they keep up that type of form. Yeah, I don't think there's really probably anybody that's comparable with Cluxton in goals, or anyone like Dermot Murphy would probably be the best Kerry goalie of the last 15 or 20 years, but I don't think you can compare him with someone like Cluxton. Dublin haven't really had a full forward, we say, of the ilk of a Donaghy or anything like that you compare against. Maybe I suppose the one that's always said is Brian Fenton is always compared, and it's an unbelievable achievement so early in his county career to be compared to Jack O'Shea. That's one that is regularly made, in fairness, just because Fenton kind of glides across the ground. Of course, Jack O'Shea, the only footballer to win Footballer of the Year 4 times, which is just it's incredible. It really is incredible. And for Brian Fenton to even be in that conversation at this stage of his career, still hasn't lost a championship match. And if we don't play in 2020, he'll have gone 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. He'll have gone 6 years without losing the championship match, which is just bonkers, really.
Yeah, your maths add up there. Fair play to you. You'd know you were a teacher in a former life. But we decided we were going to talk about one rivalry of different players from slightly different eras. They almost overlapped. But Jack McCaffrey, Footballer of the Year, Tomas O'Shea, a Footballer of the Year. Two lads who, when they got the ball and started soloing, the opposition was probably in trouble. And they're both brilliant to watch on the ball for different reasons, because Tomas O'Shea was so graceful with that sideline where he seemed to be speeding up when he actually had the ball. And that straight-legged solo mid-stride was just class. Whereas Jack McCaffrey, pure speed demon. And I was even watching back one of the games, it might have been against Mayo, the 17 final. It was on TV the other day. And just the way he went from 45 to 45 in the blink of an eye. And all the players were doing were trying to get just anyway goal side of him, even if it meant going 10 yards away from him, because he just, even that far away from goals, I can't let him get in past me here because he's going to create a goal situation. So two brilliant wing backs, but probably for very different reasons.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned about McCaffrey in the 17 final, because again, that was probably Mayo's best chance again, because McCaffrey went off a couple of minutes later, did his cruciate that day, and when you saw the speed he was running at just before that, and you're thinking, I remember Jason Doherty trying to stay with him, and as fast as he is, just couldn't stay with him. That's why you'd say that was such a lost opportunity for Mayo, because I think Dublin were missing probably, one of their best players or one of their kind of marquee men that day. But McCaffrey has totally changed what it means to be a wing back, and he's also changed what it means to be a wing forward when you're on him or around him. He's one of the first defenders that has made a forward be a defender. We talked before the All-Ireland final last year, it was who's going to mark Jack McCaffrey? Because it's Stephen O'Brien is brilliant going forward. How brilliant is he going backwards? Is he going to be able to keep Jack McCaffrey out of the game? Jack McCaffrey gave probably one of the best final performances we've ever seen. 1-3 from playing an All-Ireland final as a wing back. It's a joke really to be able to do that. And to have that much of a stamp on the game as a wing back, he's totally revolutionised what a halfback does. You mentioned about Tomas. I just love the Tomas solo. I don't know if there's anything as graceful as that Tomas straight-legged solo. And he obviously didn't have that raw pace of Jack McCaffrey. But the fact that he didn't slow down, if anything, he quickened up with the ball. Like how many people are like that? That they're faster with the ball than without it. You wouldn't count that many in general. Consistently throughout his career was rarely put on the back foot by any opponent. See, it's funny. You're measuring Jack McCaffrey now at this stage of his career, and their achievements are similar enough. They are actually pretty similar when you put them out on paper. Both obviously footballer of the year, similar amount of All Irelands. I think it's the same amount of All Irelands as well. And you just think, but if Jack McCaffrey stays at the level he's at now for another 3 or 4 years, which is more than possible. Like, look how he came back. Like, this is it, actually, just on Jack McCaffrey. This is a fella who did his cruciate, was out for the guts of the year, came back and was nearly footballer of the year, having only started playing football in June of that year. And he also took a year out to go travelling and to kind of help with his medical studies. You know, to me, Jack McCaffrey is probably one of the greatest embodiments of what the GAA is. He's a doctor. He's able to put in those big hours working in medicine, studying in medicine, and then when he delivers, he just delivers out on the pitch like few others can or possibly ever can. You know, so it's a fair battle. Consistency throughout Tomas's career is definitely in his favour at the moment. If Jack can keep his levels for another few years, he'll probably supersede him. But I think they're neck and neck.
Well, yeah, they both have 5 All-Irelands. Jack has 4 goals for Dublin, and I think he's definitely going to add to that. Tomas got 3 ever. Now, obviously, Tomas stayed going for an awful lot longer at this stage because Jack McCaffrey's still only 26. But Tomas was probably tipping 40 when he played in an All-Ireland club final with Nemo. But go back to the early 2000s and he's playing in one with Angueltic against Caltra, which I'm sure probably still stings to some degree. Jack McCaffrey pushed Clontarf pretty close a couple of years ago. I think it was a county semi-final they got to. So maybe on the basis of club alone, I think Tomas probably has the edge. But then again, they had an unreal batch come along. And it's not like he joined Minnows when he went with Nemo Rangers either, although that's not a slag now or anything like that. That's just the reality of the way it worked out. So if you were to pick one, and you can only have one, who are you going with?
I have the Kerry jersey on, but I think, to be honest with you, I'd probably take Jack. Like as you said, hard to fathom that he's only 26 years old.
But what if you put Jack into the Kerry team and you put Tomas into this Dublin team? Would that change things for you? Because Jack is part of a team that has been relentlessly on the top for a number of years.
Yeah, funny enough, like I think putting a player like Jack McCaffrey into the current Kerry team, God, he'd add so much, wouldn't he? He'd add so much. You look at, like, Paul Murphy has kind of been that type of player going forward, not the same type or anything.
But
like
I'm saying put Jack into that team of the 2000s when Kerry were winning their 5 All-Irelands.
Well, listen, if you put him into that team and the pace he would have, I don't know how you'd handle him. I really don't know how you'd handle him. Imagine how much Gooch, Donaghy and these boys would prosper with the likes of Jack McCaffrey being able to play that role. Plus, they'd have a foil to the long ball into Donaghy. They could also have McCaffrey absolutely bombing forward. Be interesting to see if he'd be able to deliver. Tomas was brilliant at delivering that diagonal ball into the big man. It'd be interesting to see if Jack would be able to kind of replicate that.
Jack could run through and just hand pass it to him. He wouldn't have to bomb it in. But I'd love to see Tomas in that Dublin team. You know the way James McCarthy for so long. I mean, James McCarthy's a different level of athlete to most lads in terms of carrying the ball, but you'd have space to run into, you'd have overlaps, you'd be getting the ball on the front foot, and I'd say Tomas would do untold damage in there.
Oh, I'd say he would, yeah. He'd fit seamlessly into that team. He was such a good defender as well. Mark would probably edge him out in the defensive stakes because he was a cornerback and maybe had to have, Mark had that kind of textbook kind of block and he was just so tight. But Tomas was, I can count on one hand, I can count on one finger the amount of times Tomas was ever really in trouble in a big championship game. The consistency of the O'Shea name, championship football, playing for Kerry is absolutely unreal. When you go back through Paddy, Dara, Mark and Tomas, it's unbelievable. But I would say, it's funny, the two of them were both selected on the RTE team of the Sunday game, basically team of the Sunday game era. Tomas was 5, Lee Keegan was actually 6 and Jack was 7. Imagine having the two of them. You know, sometimes you don't want the same type of player. So Tomas is a different type of a halfback than Jack. I just think they'd absolutely terrorise you from the halfback line. It'd be an absolute nightmare.
And there's a fair hard one to pick between if you were to go Tomas, Lee Keegan or Jack McCaffrey. We have a tough enough debate as it is, never mind throwing Lee Keegan into it as well, but we don't have a Mayo jersey here, so we're going to leave him out for now. Is there anything else we want to, like, I'd say we're both, I'm going to keep Jack. Are you going to jump with Jack as well, or are you going to back Kerry since you're wearing their colours?
No, I think I'll keep Jack because I just think
Sorry, Tomas.
what he's done. Like, Tomas probably won't be happy. And Kerry, in fairness, Kerry boys, they're very good at letting go of grudges, as we know about 1982. I'm sure he won't take it to his grave or anything like that. But what Jack has done and the potential of what he could do over the next couple of years is just phenomenal. Like, Dublin are going to be in around the All Ireland final stage for the next 3 or 4 years, and he's injury free. He's definitely going to be the one driving it. Just on the jerseys again, a bit like. These retro jerseys, it just brings back so many memories, and I think retro is kind of the new. It's kind of like the new modern almost now. GA jerseys are kind of going back to the future. Arga Retro did a great job with these jerseys. If you want to get 15% off, just use the promo code OurGame on the Arga Retro website, and there's loads of other jerseys that you can choose from. Nearly whatever county you're from, you'll have some sort of an option there. I know I have the 1982 Offaly one, an absolute peach. And I think you have the Tipperary jacket and the Tipperary jerseys from the late 80s as well. But yeah, go to Arga Retro and you get 15% off using the promo code OurGame.